I'm Deborah Bogar, facilitator for this 1-hour NACD Urban and Community Conservation webinar on urban conservation outreach. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on NACD's website along with a presentation PDF for your future access. Everyone should be connected online to see the presentation, and you can access audio via your computer or by phone. Those directions were sent with your confirmation email. As this opening slide indicates, all lines are muted except for the speakers. I'll open a chat area after the presentation so you can type in your questions and comments, and we'll take as many as we can. You might want to jot those down during the presentation. And in this webinar system, the transitions will take a few seconds as the slides load, so don't worry that it's your computer. For those who are listening by phone, here are some special instructions for the video audio. When we start the audio, go to the speaker icon above the slide, above the video, and make sure Mute Conference Audio Only is clicked. If you're listening to the audio through your computer, there's no action needed. We'll start with comments from our host, Ron Rohal, Chair of NACD's Urban and Community Resource Policy Group, which is a subcommittee of our Natural Resources Policy Committee. Ron? Ron, you might be muted.
You're right, I was muted. Thanks, Deb. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, I welcome all of you to the monthly Urban and Community Conservation webinars offered by the National Association of Conservation Districts through the support of our sole sponsor, the Scotts Miracle-Gro Company. These sessions are designed by NACD's Urban and Community Resource Policy Group, a subcommittee of district officials and partners charged with guiding the association's services and support for districts' work in developed and developing areas. Our goal through these webinars is to help districts share what they are doing nationwide and enable them to learn from each other and various agencies and organizations. We appreciate the support of the Scotts Miracle-Gro Company for making them possible. I invite you to let us know what you think about each webinar and what other topics you would like us to cover by contacting NACD staffer Deb Bogar. And please tell our NACD officers what type of assistance you would like from our National Association for your urban and community conservation work. Now, before I hand this over to Deb, I just want to say a great big thank you for all you've done, Deb. We've been doing these for 8 years now. The first one was in the 20th of September 2012. So, Deb, thank you for all your help in making these webinars possible. So now I'm going to hand it over to you first speakers.
Been happy to do so, Ron. Thanks so much. And for those who don't know, I am retiring at the end of this month. So now we're going to move on to our speakers. Today we have 3 speakers from the Tualatin Soil and Water Conservation District in Oregon, along with a brief video. Lacey Townsend grew up in Washington County and loves being a part of conserving its natural resources. She came to the Tualatin SWCD as a resource technician in 2006, writing conservation plans and providing technical assistance to rural landowners, and has been leading the organization since 2011. Briita Pajunas joined the Tualatin SWCD in 2014 and now leads the Urban Conservation Program, where she helps residents plan and implement a myriad of conservation projects. Her love for observing wildlife is closely matched with her love for helping people conserve the land and waters within the Tualatin River watershed. As an education and outreach specialist with the Tualatin SWCD, Andrew Felton shares his love of the environment and conservation by helping those around him connect to the natural world. He supports the district's programs and mission by coordinating conservation workshops, developing outreach and education materials, and hosting school field trips. And with that, for our speaker team, I'm loading the slides for the presentation now. When it comes up on your screen, I think, Lacey, you're the first one. You can take it from there.
Okay, hi everyone, this is Lacey. I'm going to go through a couple of slides explaining who we are and a bit of background about our district. I'll then hand it over to Andrew and Briita to discuss outreach strategies and tools, as well as some specific project examples in the urban area and how we've conducted outreach for those projects. So we were founded in 1955. And we've had a similar mission throughout the years. Basically, our mission is to provide technical assistance, financial assistance, and education in order to create a sustainable, productive, and healthy environment for the Washington County community. As you can see on the small map on the right of Oregon, we're located in the northwest corner of Oregon in Washington County. Our district serves the entire county. Most of the county falls within the Tualatin River watershed, hence our name, Tualatin SWCD. The 84-mile Tualatin River drains a land area of about 712 square miles. Approximately 50% of our county is forest, 35% agriculture, and 15% urban. And while the urban land area seems small, the majority of the population resides within the urban area. Washington County is the second most populous county in Oregon. As of 2019, there were over 601,000 people living in our county. This is a list of all of our current programs. In November 2016, Washington County voters passed a permanent tax levy, allowing us to serve the entire county, including urban and forested areas, which are program areas that have been developed since 2017 in our district. Prior to this, we really only served the rural area in a limited capacity. We have grown from 5 to 19 staff in the past 4 years, greatly increasing our capacity to the Washington County community. This presentation is going to focus on our urban conservation program and outreach strategies that we've been using. I'm going to hand it over to Andrew now to discuss some of those strategies.
Great, thank you so much, Lacey. As Deb mentioned at the top, my name is Andrew Felton. I'm an education and outreach specialist at the Tualatin SWCD. Today I'm going to highlight some of the outreach strategies that we've had at the district, specifically kind of what we've tailored towards our more urban communities. Like everything that's going around us today, these outreach strategies have been impacted by COVID. And so I've kind of organized this to highlight some of the strategies that we've had prior to COVID, and then some that we've had after, and I'll go into a little bit more in depth in those. So pre-COVID, we often held a lot of in-person workshops. The goals of these workshops were twofold. One was to provide background knowledge for many of the residents that live in our urban communities, and secondly was to help them see some of the solutions that they could implement to help solve some of the resource concerns that we have within those communities. These workshops were mostly contracted, and our speakers were from outside individuals or organizations. We often held them at centers within the communities themselves. Typically in our urban areas, these would be at libraries, nature centers, any local farms that are bordering those communities, places like that. Oftentimes these workshops were not intended just for the residents themselves, but we also established some workshops that were more targeted towards contractors that operate within our watershed. The idea behind this was oftentimes you might not have residents that are willing to implement some of these conservation actions that we're hoping for, but we have many contractors that operate that might just not have the background knowledge or the background skill set or even know what some of these sustainable solutions are. So we wanted to help train them up so that as they're doing their work, they will be better equipped to help us with conservation within our service area. We also table at many community events and at farmers markets. The general goal behind that is just to get our name out into the community. At Tualatin, we really pride ourselves in being a community leader and being a trusted source of information. And to be a trusted source, you have to be a household name. And so with these tabling events, we wanted to have our presence be felt out in the community itself. We also held many field days with local middle schools and high schools. This is particularly a great way to help with invasive species and native species education. And we also created a lot of mailers or door hangers that help promote and highlight some of the different projects that we have in urban Washington County. And we also had a presence on social media. Now, post-COVID, we had to adjust, like everyone these days. And I'll go into each one of these in a little bit more detail further down the line here. But essentially, we had to go virtual with many of our outreach strategies. We took all of our workshops and webinars online. We began highlighting our projects and our resources through video as well as through story maps. And we also took the time to re-examine how we presented material both on our website as well as on our social media channels. But most importantly, during this time, we tried new things. That's something that if there's one thing in my section of the presentation that I hope you all could take away is take this time to try something new. You know, some of the things that we've tried has worked, other things have not worked. But each time that we've been trying something, we've adjusted and we've made it better along the way. And most folks, most residents within our communities understand that right now. And I really can't reiterate enough that now is a good time to try something new if you've been planning on it. Now, one of the biggest shifts that we've had has been within our workshop series. As I've mentioned, you know, we've been learning as we've been going along with these. And in the next slide, I'll share some of the tips that we've learned through these presentations, through these workshops. What we've found is that we've been actually able to expand our workshop topics, the number of workshops that we've held, and our speakers during this kind of post-COVID era. What we've done is we've actually worked with our internal staff and partners, like our local extension office, to hold these virtual webinars and workshops. We've actually almost doubled the amount of workshops that we normally hold in a particular year, and our attendance has nearly tripled because of these workshops. Now, one thing that is always hard when you're putting on a workshop is who are you going to have as a speaker? If you have a verbose coworker or somebody who you know has a large interest in an area, I want to encourage you all to reach out to them about being a presenter. They have a lot of knowledge. We have a lot of knowledge within our districts, and being able to share that knowledge with the community is really a great thing. One thing that we've done with our workshop series is start to build what we're calling a module model. We're essentially kind of setting up an education system within our workshop. So at the basics, the 101 level, typically a pre-recorded workshop that those who just want to have some background knowledge of the material can join in to see. The next level, our 102 series, if you will, helps kind of provide more practical knowledge and help folks implement actions within their communities. This is great for those folks who are kind of do-it-yourselfers at home. And then finally, we're starting to put together what we're calling office hours, where folks can actually sign up and schedule some time to speak with an expert or with one of our specialists so that they can have some additional expertise. By doing that, you're establishing material and presentations so that anyone at any one of those levels can reach out and participate in conservation within your areas. One thing to really keep in mind as you're doing these virtual workshops is surveys are increasingly important. We've been using our post-workshop surveys to help assess the knowledge of our participants. And then we've also started sending out a 6-month follow-up survey to help see if these folks have actually implemented the conservation actions that we've been trying to talk about within their lands. Now here's a few tips that we've learned along the way. We found that keeping our webinars and our workshops to about 45 minutes to an hour is a really great time frame. Participants don't start checking out. Your speakers also end up getting a little bit tired after about an hour or so. We've also started to put in kind of some short Q&A intermissions during our workshop series. This allows folks who need to get up to use the bathroom a chance to do so. Usually these Q&A intermissions only kind of really incorporate 2 questions or so. They're nice and short, but it's a nice break for folks along the way. Many programs that you use to hold these workshops allow you to either stream to other social media channels. That's a great way to increase your audience. As well, many of them allow you to have surveys pop up at the very end, and I want to highly encourage you to do so. You're going to have better participation in your surveys if you have it pop up right after the conclusion of a webinar. And finally, make sure to record your webinars and post and share them out with a follow-up email. That follow-up email can also contain some additional resources so folks know what those next steps they can take are, and that just provides them an easier access to resources that get shared during those workshops. Now, one of the strategies that our team has been most excited about putting together during this time is our video highlights. These are short 3 to 5 minute videos that help feature conservation actions, projects, or resources themselves. They can be heavily produced, or they can be simple do-it-yourself videos that you can film at your house or in your community itself. We've hosted these videos on YouTube and then really encouraged our conservation specialists as well as our partners to share them out. If we're having conversations out in the community with folks who express interest in something and we have a corresponding video, just encourage them to pop over to your YouTube channel to see what those look like. And it helps really provide a tactile visual example that people can see. Now, today we loaded up one of our videos that helps folks see, that can help provide an example to introduce you to watersheds and then what watershed health might be. So I'll hand it back over to Deb for you to load up that video.
All right, and I'm going to run it now. And a reminder then for our speakers and Ariel to mute your own phones. And for those who are listening by phone, to go to that up above this video, make sure you mute conference audio only. And with that, here we go.
Dylan. When I bought my house here in Hillsboro, I was super excited about the schools nearby, the location, and this sweet yard. But I got so caught up in learning all about the neighborhood I was going to be part of that I didn't really think about what watershed I was in until recently. It turns out, we all live in a watershed. I got curious, so I did some research, and I found out that the Tualatin River is actually the only river in Washington County. The Tualatin River goes all the way from the Coast Range in the west to the Willamette River in the east. And there's a whole network of creeks and streams that run through rural and urban areas to feed the Tualatin River, which in turn flows into the Willamette River. We get our drinking water from the Tualatin River, and that water is also used for fish and wildlife habitat, irrigation, and recreation too. My house, my yard, my neighborhood, my city, we're all part of the watershed. I wanted to learn more, so I called the Tualatin Soil and Water Conservation District for a little advice. Charlotte's coming over from the Tualatin SWCD right now. Hey, Charlotte.
Hey, Dylan.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good, thanks. I've got a few questions for you, but first I feel like I could use a little help nailing down exactly what a watershed is.
Absolutely. So a watershed is an area of land where all the water that's falling on it or running under it is draining to the same point. And the boundaries of a watershed are defined by the contours of the land, the hills, the valleys, the slopes. And when water falls, it's making its way from wherever it fell down to the lowest point of the watershed. In our watershed, that's the point where the Tualatin River meets the Willamette River.
Oh, okay.
And in a healthy watershed, all the land is acting as a sponge. It's absorbing rainwater when it falls, it's holding onto it so it doesn't run off too quickly, and then slowly releasing it back into streams and creeks and rivers. Do you know where your closest creek is?
Nope, I don't think so.
I'd love to show you. Let's head this way.
Okay, sure.
So here we are. This is Rock Creek. This is the creek that all of the water coming from your property and your neighborhood flows to. Rock Creek then meets up with Beaverton Creek, and then that flows into the Tualatin River.
Okay. So how do the actions of homeowners like me affect our watershed?
Well, we live in an area that has a lot of rainfall, so that means there's a lot of water coming down in our neighborhoods where it can't easily soak into the ground. It's running off our roofs, our driveways, our roads, and it's picking up lots of sediment and pollutants on its way to the waterways. So the things that we do on our own properties really can have an effect on water quality and on the health of the watershed as a whole.
So what can I do to help manage the rainwater running off my property?
A great place to focus is reducing the amount of water that's running off your property. And there's a lot of ways you can do this. One example is to install a rain garden, so that'll help absorb rainfall. You can also harvest rainwater using a rain barrel or a rain cistern. And it would also be great if you could take any impermeable surfaces you have that aren't really in use and change those to permeable surfaces. It's also important to try to reduce the amount of pollutants on your property, so you can install a low-maintenance landscape that requires fewer chemicals to maintain, or you can do simple things to reduce waste, like start a compost bin.
Okay, those all sound pretty good. Really like the rain garden idea, though. Maybe I'll make one of those at my house.
Great. Well, if you need any more information, find us at Tualatin SWCD.org.
Okay. Thanks so much for coming to visit, Charlotte.
Thanks. Great to meet you.
You too.
Okay, hopefully everybody was able to view that very well, and I'm going to go back to the slides here.
Great. Thank you so much for playing that, Deb.
You bet.
So as I mentioned, that video itself was one of our more highly produced videos. They don't have to be. You can have them be more do-it-yourself. The sheet mulching video that I had on the previous screen, that's one that I filmed in my front yard as I was doing a sheet mulching project. So they can be a little bit more lower produced than that if you wanted to kind of create those for your own districts. Now another area that we focused on during this time was trying to reframe some of the content that we had on our website. This is part of a larger project where we're actually going through and revamping our entire website. We're hoping to relaunch our new site in November, but that doesn't mean that you can't do that on your own site now. What we've really tried to do is we tried to reframe our resource concerns around what our users might be asking, not about our internal programs or our internal jargon that we use in our everyday life. What I always like to kind of say is, ask yourself, if you were a person who was having issue X, what is the information that you would be looking for? Or better yet, if you have a friend or a neighbor that isn't in the field of conservation, ask them, hey, you're having this issue. What would you want to know about this issue? And then take that information and put it on your website so it's easy to find. On your site, you really want to make sure to be concise, be action-based. Bullet points are very much your friend in this regard. Large paragraphs typically just don't get read on the web. If you do have, a large piece of information that you want to share, I encourage you to set up a separate document that can be downloadable that folks can see after they've gone through those kind of quick hit action items that you might have. The organization that I've found that really helps me, I'm a person who likes templates, is the first section will detail what your issue is. The second section will be kind of providing some actionable solutions that a person might be able to take, and then you plug out to additional resources, whether those are internal resources or external resources. Oops, went too far there. Another way that we've been solely working on, we're just now implementing these to help highlight some of our projects that we're undertaking, is through ArcGIS story maps. We're still new at story maps, so we're still getting our feet wet a little bit. But story maps are a great way to be able to dynamically tell the story of a project or of a resource. They are very similar to kind of a mixture of PowerPoint presentations and websites. Usually they're very easy to use. They oftentimes implement a lot of different sort of multimedia, whether that's videos, photos, maps, you name it. and they really help you tell a story in a dynamic manner that can really capture your audience's imagination. They're very easy to set up. There's many templates that you can use as you're putting yours together, but just another strategy that you might investigate as you're looking at putting in some outreach strategies. We also have been starting to do some free giveaways for our audiences. These are often items that we would normally give away at our tabling events or through workshop participation. We've been using a lot of these giveaways to encourage survey participation or just, at kind of working them within some of our content on our website. One example recently, we just put up an article that highlighted some of the benefits of planting in the fall, which many people don't know about. And then at the end, we just had a simple form that folks who live in Washington County can complete, and then we'll actually send them a free seed packet as well as some additional literature on how they can plant some of these native seed packets that we have. It's just a nice way to get these resources out in the community in a time where we're not able to go out into the community itself. And finally, within our social media channels, we've also started to re-examine how we're expressing content. I'm by no means a social media expert, so kind of bear that in mind. And social media inherently has a lot of headaches, but it is a really good way to connect with your community at this time. We really try to change our content to be more engaging, asking your audiences for help, asking them to share photos of the work that they're doing, things like that. And really keeping them light and lively during this time is very important. Social media is also a really great way to amplify your partner's messages. We all have very similar goals within the field of conservation, so there's no reason that we can't help support and spread that word around. Now, as I mentioned, these are just some general strategies that we've been trying to reach urban audiences, but one of the major issues that we are continuing to grapple with is how can we reach audiences that have been historically underrepresented or underserved by our district. And for more on that, I'm going to hand it over to Briita.
All right, great. Thank you, Andrew. Yes, so my name is Briita Pajunas. I'm the Urban Conservation Specialist in the Urban Conservation Program at the Tualatin SWCD. You can see that picture there of the horse, me walking through a pasture. So I first got my start in 2014 at the Conservation District working on riparian revegetation projects within our streamset enhancement program. And then in, I guess it was early 2018, I transitioned over to the Urban Conservation Program. So I've really been enjoying that new set of challenges that brings, and it's been great. So today I'm going to talk about what the Urban Conservation Program is currently working on, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Urban Program is doing to expand our service offering so that we will be relevant and accessible for the diverse urban community of Washington County. So, our organization knows that our service district has a very large population, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and we want to be doing a much better job in the future at providing our services more equitably and intentionally. So later in the presentation, I'll discuss some steps we are taking to figure out how to do just that. So the Urban Conservation Program vision, we empower residents to improve backyard habitat, grow sustainable gardens, and use water wisely to maintain a healthy community. We know the need is growing for urban conservation education and technical assistance in Washington County. Like Lacey was saying earlier, approximately 15% of Washington County landmass, falls within the urban growth boundary, and then 58% of the county's population lives in one of our 13 cities, and then another 36% lives in unincorporated, non-municipal areas. So, in total, that's about 94% of the people within our service district are urban residents. And in general, this population is growing at nearly twice the rate of the state of Oregon as a whole. So we're seeing a lot of new movement into the area, and we expect that in the future. So companies you may have heard of, such as Nike, Intel, and Tektronix, are all headquartered and based in urban Washington County. So we're commonly known as the Silicon Forest. One example of a project here you can see in this picture in the lower is the SWCD supporting an education garden that was installed with the Washington County Master Gardeners Association just a few years ago. This was implemented in part with a small grant that the SWCD was able to offer them. And then in the lower right, we have some folks installing an insect hotel to provide shelter for beneficial insects. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the urban conservation program elements next. So I spent a lot of time doing conservation project planning, implementation guidance with residents, and cost share funding assistance along with those projects. Some of the examples that we are commonly working on, these projects that fall within some of our landowner cost share program, include water conservation projects such as rainwater harvesting, sustainable stormwater management, including bioswales, rain gardens, pervious pavement, and eco-roofs. We spend a lot of time doing planning and implementation of naturescaping and pollinator plantings. And then we spend a lot of energy and time doing school garden improvements and community gardens as well with our grant program. We also do a lot of regional habitat conservation projects under our habitat conservation program. So a little bit more detail on that. This program exists to protect and restore those rare and unique habitat types with high ecological value that include, high priority fish and wildlife habitat within Washington County. So the HCP program kind of spreads beyond urban. There's a lot of programs being implemented under this in the rural and streamside enhancement programs as well. Under the HCP program, priority habitats for us include oak, woodland, and prairie, wetlands, streams, streamside areas, and upland forest. And then the urban program staff, myself, we do a lot of public engagement and education as well. So just some examples, in any given month, I might do a couple presentations. It really just varies on the season and the demand. We'll do, Washington County Green Bag Lunch and Learns. I'll do a lot of evening presentations for homeowners association meetings. Some of those have been virtual, now recently with COVID. I do a lot of youth education programming and presentations in very close coordination with Andrew's team and other conservation education program staff. And then the SWCD also operates a large and small grant program, so I do a lot of grant planning and consultation. In the right here, you can see a picture of the school garden that was installed at West Union Elementary School outside Hillsborough under our TWIG grant program. TWIG stands for Tualatin Watershed Improvement Grant. This is a small grant program. It's up to $5,000 per applicant per year to cover eligible projects associated with a myriad of conservation type efforts. Costs can include materials and labor, design and planning, and currently we've completed 40 grants with the TWIG grant program with school and community groups, and we are still actively working on completing 20 more grants this year. Okay. And so here's just kind of a selection of some different urban conservation projects that we have been working on recently. On the upper left, this was a landowner that attended one of the naturescaping workshops that Andrew's team offered. They applied for a TWIG grant, and they were able to complete a pollinator hedgerow to replace some arborvitae that was dying out, not doing great, and definitely not offering a lot of pollinator services. In the upper middle, that's a picture of a classic beaver dam that we see a lot of in Washington County in rural and urban. So I do a lot of ad hoc education on beaver management. We have previously offered workshops on urban beaver management as well at our organization. In the upper right, there's that sign that says Certified Backyard Habitat. This is a terrific program. It's a joint program between the Audubon Society Portland chapter and a local land trust called the Columbia Land Trust. This program provides assistance and incentives to residents with small lots, so an acre or smaller, or community sites for folks that are seeking to restore native wildlife habitat to their yards or outdoor spaces. And so beginning several years ago, when the SWCD knew we were going to be able to expand funding and have more urban resources available, we began discussions with this group. And so we're now funding, along with some other city partners as well, the Backyard Habitat Certification Program expansion into all of urban Washington County. And really, this program provides more capacity to the SWCD urban program in many ways. And so since this program's expansion into Washington County in 2019, their staff have completed 224 site visits and enrolled 58 combined acres of private land. And what's cool is many of these enrollees into that program have been referred to the SWCD for additional technical assistance and financial assistance to get their conservation projects implemented on the ground, which has been really great. In the bottom left, it's an example of one of the Habitat Conservation Program sites that I'll talk about a little bit later. And then in the bottom right, that's just an example of one of the landowner cost share program sites. It's a rainwater catchment system. This family had just moved from Michigan, where they had rain fall kind of more consistently year-round. And in Portland, Oregon area and Tualatin Basin, you know, we have a Mediterranean summer. It really dries out between the months of June and September. And so they were shocked at the amount of irrigation water that they were using to manage their landscaping. So we assisted them by completing a conservation plan, and a cost share, 75% cost share project was implemented at their site to install this 3,100-gallon non-potable cistern. So the theme amongst all these projects is just a really cool, strong connection. Oh, and I was going to say that that individual had attended a rainwater harvesting workshop at the SWCD, and that's where he learned about our financial assistance program to begin with. So we do have a strong connection between the conservation education program staff and their educational offerings, and then getting connections with residents to urban program offerings. And so this is another example of a direct financial assistance cost share program site. So eligible projects within this cost share program are most commonly associated with improvements made to water quality, water conservation, soil health, and wildlife habitat on private residential sites. Under the Direct FA program, the client has the option to do most of the labor or contracts it out to a skilled contractor if they want, you know, just depending on the scale and complexity of the project. This site had landscape design knowledge in-house, so that was really helpful for them, so they could, with the conservation district, you know, make sure that this rain garden was going to be sized appropriately and that appropriate site prep was going to take place. So this side yard previously had high stormwater runoff, you know, from this excessive amount of unused cement driveway. They weren't even using this driveway. And then a large non-native bamboo cluster. So about 2,300 square feet of concrete was removed from this site last fall. And now they've installed a rain garden that captures, you know, runoff from about 1,600 square feet of roof that flows into 2 disconnected downspouts and enters into this rain garden. I'll show a picture of some of the pretty flowers. So these are native Camassia clematis that are blooming here on the right just a few months after the bulbs were installed. And then you can see the rain garden already capturing some roof runoff. This is just a picture showing that pollinator hedgerow again and the signs. So we definitely offer individual signs if they want, you know, especially if in our high traffic areas. And if they request them, so we can deliver signs or they can pick them up at the office. At this point, we're not requiring them, but it's a really nice passive outreach option for us just to spread the word that we're offering different technical and financial assistance offerings in urban Washington County. So again, that kind of household name recognition we're trying with signs like this. So this is just a deeper dive into that Glen Coast Whale Habitat Restoration Project, which is housed under the Habitat Conservation Program. So this is a 4-mile greenway located in the city of Hillsborough. So the city owns 63 acres of green space that was already being restored starting in 2019 by the local stormwater wastewater utility district called Clean Water Services. So our role in this partnership, you know, is to engage the private residents that own about 27 acres of land that lies in between these public greenway areas. And so the goals of the HCP in this area are to control high priority invasive species such as Himalayan blackberry, reed canary grass, English ivy, Japanese knotweed is a bad one, and purple loosestrife. Those are considered high priority weeds. And then we replant with native shrubs, trees, and wetland species in order to improve water quality and aesthetic and reduce habitat fragmentation. So under the HCP program, the SWCD is able to enroll all willing landowners along the stream and wetland within this greenway. However, to be successful, you know, we required a large outreach campaign with outreach material development and public engagement events. So lots of community partners, as you can see with those logos, were super critical to this project being able to be successful. It's a multi-year project still underway. These are just some examples of those outreach materials that were developed. So we created a project brief here in the upper left, a door hanger in the upper right, and with all of that, several mailings going out in previous just the last year, about 3 mailings, we've been able to enroll some of the private residents that have properties in between. So I don't know if you can see the colors showing up very well, but everything in purple is the city-owned greenway. It's mostly wetland and riparian habitat. And then here in the middle, kind of in that lower middle, we were able to enroll some private tax lots. So about 7 privately owned wetland tax lots were enrolled last year, so for about 2 acres, and then 5 additional streamside properties were able to enroll just this summer. So let me see if I can forward slide. Yep, that was everything in the middle up here, in the middle of the screen. So, you know, we're making progress. I will say that outreach like this in a corridor level project is fairly time intensive. Some folks are early adapters, some want to see work being completed at their neighbor's property first. And so this is just an example of a site that was enrolled in previous years, just outside the HCP boundary, up closer to the airport in Hillsborough. So this is what site prep looks like, before site prep, sorry. And then we've got all the canary grass and blackberry has been removed. And so there's bare root that have been installed, as well as some cuttings. And then this is just recently, earlier this summer, pictures showing the native willow and Douglas spirea are starting to establish along this stretch of Glen Coast Swale. Another similar project under the HCP program is located in Beaverton along Hall Creek. This one's been working out a little bit easier in some ways with outreach. Neighbor to neighbor outreach is fantastic. We usually will hand willing landowners some business cards or some project brief flyers, and then they knock on the next door neighbor's house. So that's been making it a lot easier for me. So last year we had about 11 sites enrolled, and then just this summer we are bringing on an additional 23 properties into this corridor level riparian project. So 2.4 acres enrolled last year, and now we have an additional 4.7 acres enrolling this year. So I think with COVID, I will say, I think more people are opening their mail potentially and reading these strange letters coming from conservation districts and, you know, giving us a call. It's been really rewarding, especially in this area, to have a pretty fantastic turnout in response to our mailers and door hangers. Okay, I'm going to transition now with just a few minutes left to the Urban Living Handbook project that the Urban program has been working on. So what is this project? Why are we doing it? We've recognized in previous years we're feeling currently limited in our delivery related to a lot of phone calls that come our way, individual requests. You know, we're responding to these kind of case by case, but sometimes we're getting a lot of repetitive requests, very similar information requests, and so we're really wanting to be a little bit more organized and coherent with how we respond to those and maybe more efficient. So we feel like some of our current outreach resources are insufficient. We're doing great overall, but we would like to have them offered in multiple languages. Just for example, we would love to have one cohesive resource accessible by all urban residents. We would like to have a better understanding of partner organization services. Honestly, what are, you know, what's the city of Tigard offering? What's the city of Sherwood able to do related to some of these requests? So having some of that information all in one place. And we feel that our Black, Indigenous, and people of color audience really could require more attention with some of the services that we're providing. So we would love to have a new resource to connect urban residents to natural resource topics, and then our massive network of service providers within urban Washington County, and getting us all on the same page and having a similar resource to work with. So the project goals, we would like to be able to communicate natural processes at work within the Tualatin River watershed, such as flooding, forest succession, and erosion, and how urbanization, so things like development, increased impervious surfaces, and infrastructure in the floodplain has affected these processes over time. Within this resource, we'd like to be able to create connections to resources for individuals and communities in the Tualatin River watershed by sharing information about Washington County service providers and community stakeholder groups. We'd love to be able to inspire individuals to take positive action where they live, work, and play, just to get more engaged and have more opportunities to steward their natural resources. So some of the desired project outcomes for this Urban Living Handbook, we would love to see a reduction in redirected phone calls. So what I mean by that is individuals calling our organization who have already called the county, who have already called multiple cities maybe, who have just kind of had a hard time finding the solution or the information that they need the first time. So ideally, we would also like to have them just know who to contact the first time and get a little bit more clarity on what the different service providers offer. We'd love to see an increase in resident participation in programs and educational opportunities offered by Washington County Natural Resources Service providers. And once delivered, I think we know it's a fairly successful resource if we're seeing other stakeholder groups referring residents to this resource. So So this past spring, we worked with a research firm called Stamberger Outreach Consulting. They're based out of Portland to learn more about what type of resource our own partner agencies would use and would like to see created to assist with their service delivery to urban Washington County residents. The overarching goals of this online survey are to identify environmental concerns and service needs among stakeholder groups and to collect input and feedback from stakeholder groups for use in the development of an urban living handbook. So we had a pretty high response rate. We had 69 total survey completions over the course of about a month. It was a short 7-question survey. It was provided through SurveyMonkey via email. In general, stakeholder and partner groups were sharing that flooding and beavers were the most reported concern experienced, so everyone that's serving the public that we were able to get information from. And then they were also mentioning invasive plants, water pollution, and development are also things that they're getting a lot of requests on and just questions related to. 77% of stakeholders surveyed said an urban living handbook type resource would help address the needs of residents in their area, so there was general support for the creation of such a resource. We got a lot of requests, of course, for additional chapters and topics such as tree health, contact information related to permitting, proper yard debris and leaf disposal. So I think one of the struggles we'll have, of course, is just making sure that everyone's needs and hopes are met in this one resource, which is, yeah, a pretty lofty goal. In addition to reaching out to stakeholder groups this year, our urban market research has included a series of focus groups within communities of color that the SWCD and Clean Water Services have not traditionally heard from via our current means of public engagement mechanisms in the past. So we decided to work with an organization called Community Engagement Liaison Services, also based out of Portland, to engage with their large network of community member liaisons. And then these community liaisons then recruited focus group participants from within their own communities. So you can see in the lower bottom right, there's a table of a bunch of the different community sites and organizations that we are able to work with through this organization. So focus groups that we worked with included members from Asian, African, African American, Latino, Middle Eastern, and North African, Native American, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders, and the Slavic communities that all live within Washington County. The idea was to ask urban community members what they want to see in such a resource and how we can be serving them better as organizations, what are their interests, and what programs would they like to have made available. So we had a lot of different objectives for this focus group effort. We're trying to collect input and feedback from these underrepresented groups for use in the development of the Urban Living Handbook, and then also we wanted to hear recommendations for how the SWCD and our stormwater wastewater utility district partner could better serve communities of color in the offerings that they have. We were able to hold one focus group in person, the Arabic focus group here in early March, and then all of the reservations at our libraries and community sites had to be canceled because of COVID. And so we were able to regroup in June, and we just moved all of our focus groups to a virtual format, and that worked out pretty well overall. We were able to complete all 8 focus groups during the months of June and July via Zoom. I will say this project is still ongoing. We had to adjust our timeline accordingly. We had to move all the focus groups back a few months, but we were able to move some of our resource content drafting with our team forward a few months. In general, we're really excited to have all of our data analysis for these focus groups completed by this late September, so then we can kind of get all that feedback incorporated and begin the real work on developing our Urban Living Handbook. We're hoping to use a story map or a website, so an online format, ideally with complementary print fact sheets and other print versions as needed. And so just as a quick wrap up, these were some of the initiatives that our program has been working on lately. We're very excited to come back and perhaps share some of the results of our urban Washington County research in the future. And thank you so much for listening.
All right. And from here, that's our last slide. So before I open up to questions, Lacey, did any of our other speakers have comments before we go to the Q&A?
No, I don't have anything.
All right, so here we go. I'm going to open up the chat area. And for our participants, once it comes on your screen, you'll see that in the lower left, there's a tiny little box. Type in your questions or comments there, and then hit enter so we see it on the screen. And as they come in, I'll read off a question or comment so we capture that in our audio recording and then refer it to our speakers. And I see we have a number of folks coming in. While they're doing that, let me just get the question going, let's see, to Lacey. Can you give us a little bit of info on the makeup of your board of directors?
Sure. We have 7 directors on our board. 5 of them are zone positions in owning land, and then there's 2 at-large positions, which could be anyone in the county. Our board is currently made up of primarily farmers, and so that hasn't yet shifted to like an urban director for the at-large positions yet, but that could happen in.
All right, from Rick, he wasn't able to see the video. Is it on the district website? And before you guys answer, I'll just let all of our participants know that it will be in the recording we have of this overall webinar, which we'll have posted on our website, and you'll also get a specific email about it. But before that's available, for our speakers then, is that same video available on your district website?
I can take that question. So right now it is not hosted on our current website. It will be on our future one come November. But if you go to our district's YouTube channel, just do YouTube Tualatin SWCD, and that channel will pop up. It is available there, as well as many of the other conservation practices videos that we've put together thus far.
Very cool. Okay. From Tom, nice work, good program. What funding is available for education and outreach, BMP installation, and technical assistance? Lacey, do we want to start with you on that?
Sure. We do have a conservation education grants program, which would go to organizations to do conservation education related projects throughout the county. And then Briita mentioned our small and large grant programs, which landowners and entities or organizations could apply for funding to do actual on-the-ground projects. So we have a variety of grant programs. And then we also do some direct financial assistance with projects that our staff are working on and can provide some funding for to implement on the ground as well.
And I think I was wondering too, where do you guys get the funding that you're able to do and pay for your staff, pay for your cost share, pay for those grants that you do?
So all of that grant funding that we're putting out into the community is coming directly from the public tax dollars, from that tax levy funding. All of the urban funding is coming from that.
Okay. If I recall correctly, that was a huge initiative, so that might be another webinar someday, the details of that. Okay, from Jackie, thank you all for this great info and tips. And from Dixie, we've got, how did you collect emails for sending out surveys, promoting workshops, etc.? Would that go to Briita?
I can probably take that one. So with our workshop kind of outreach and advertisement, we'll usually kind of create an event page on our own website and then share that out with our partner organizations. So whether that's the local extension office, Briita had mentioned the Backyard Habitat program. They have a large email list that will, help advertise that through. There's a Master Gardeners Association in Washington County. So we'll start reaching out to many of our partners and have them also help create those or help spread the word about our workshops. And then during that registration process, folks, have their name and email address. And once we have that information at the conclusion of the workshop, we'll then send out that follow-up email with the recording, survey, additional resources, those sorts of things. So those are always really great ways to advertise. Pre-COVID, we would also create flyers that we would go and pass out in the community itself. Oftentimes there's a lot of, listservs that you might be able to post some of your workshops onto, things along those lines.
Okay, very cool. Before I move on to Judy's question, which I'll be able to answer, I am going to move to contact information for our three speakers. So we will capture these questions that we have now. If we get more and are not able to answer them all, you'll be able to follow up with the individuals. So from Judy, that was very impressive. Will the slides be available so I can share with my staff? Yes, NACD, we will have both the recording and a PDF of this presentation, so the slides will be available on our website, and you'll get an email notifying you when that's available, usually within a day or two here. From Laura, when you provide presentations online, how can viewers input their name after watching the presentation in case we need to provide credits to them? I did hear at one point you provide surveys afterwards. That might be a good idea to get contact information, but sometimes people like to be anonymous for surveys. Better idea?
Yeah, so with a lot of our surveys, we do track some. There's a few ways that you can do it. We do track some information just because we like to send up those follow-up information, and especially if you are going to be doing any of those free giveaways, it's nice to have that information, but we make the name, address, email address all voluntary on the survey response. So if folks don't want to include that, they don't have to. And that we typically use SurveyMonkey, and so that's one of the nice features of that platform to do so. In terms of how do we get it after watching it, on our recordings, which we again upload onto YouTube, we add a link to our survey, to the survey within the video description, and then just encourage folks either at the top of the video or at the very end, and let them know that that link lives within that video description, and they can fill them out after the fact.
Okay. I'm going to read this question. I think it's just been answered, but we'll go ahead. From Jackie, where does the money come from for your urban cost share programs, your budget, donations, or grants? And Lacey, you talked about the mill levy. Is that correct?
Yeah, so our urban program is entirely funded through our tax levy funding, through our budget.
Okay. From Victoria, two questions. One, for the first speaker, how do you identify contractors in the area who may not even be aware of county code ordinances and or construction hours? Let's do that one first.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great question. And it's something that we continually struggle with. One thing that we've recently done is we put out a request for information for contractors within the county. And that's so that we could put together a sort of directory of contractors. So if residents within the county are hoping to implement some of these conservation actions and they just don't have the skill set or the time and they'd like to contract with somebody to do so, that list can live on our website. And through there, we just try to work our connections with our partners. We'll if we are going to be holding one of those contractor workshops, we'll send that out to the contractors that we know and then just ask that they share them with any colleagues that they might have. Oftentimes, the organizations that we contract for those workshops also have connections within our community, and we just try to spread the word that way. Again, it's about networking, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but the more that we can spread the word and let folks know that those offerings are out there, the better.
Okay, great. And then before I read the next question, which will be for Briita, just for the folks who are still with us, I know we've hit the hour. I'm going to continue. Our speakers had told us they'd be able to go a little bit longer. I'm going to continue and capture as many as we can within the next 5 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. So for Briita, does your Glencoe project ever deal with potential future development, and how does that affect the project? Great program and good info about outreach.
Yeah, that's a great question. Within the Glencoe project specifically, that's all wetland. And so a lot of the land that's in that central area that's already been enrolled cannot actually be developed. It's located within the FEMA-defined floodplain. And then also our local stormwater wastewater utility district does have some protections in place, so they require there to be a protected vegetated corridor actually along all perennial riparian corridors within urban Washington County and within their district boundaries. So that's helpful in ensuring we have some peace of mind that restoration that we're investing in is going to be protected long term. However, there is a large 14-acre natural area that's in an upland area just above the wetlands that's wooded right now. It's owned by a local HOA. Potentially that HOA could one day to sell and develop that, but it's unlikely. It's directly adjacent to the Hillsborough Parks Department holding, and we're hoping that instead of that happening, the parks might eventually absorb that. So, yep, that's a real risk, but we're feeling pretty good about most of the areas that are being enrolled that would be protected from development long term.
Okay. From Anita, who does the videos? Is it a staff who has that skill, or do you hire a firm?
So we've done both with many of our videos. The one that you saw today was contracted out, but we've also done some of those more do-it-yourself home videos. And both of them have advantages and disadvantages, obviously. I mean, the one that you saw today is very polished, and you could really get that background information. But it takes more time. You have to go through contracting. There's more planning that's involved. And even some of the do-it-yourself videos that we've put together, they're nice because they show that personality of you as an organization, and they make our organization feel more relatable to the general residents of urban Washington County, so that they think, oh, hey, I could do this project. You know, this is something that I could definitely do. So we've done both.
Okay. From Tixie, how did private homeowners typically change their yards to participate as stewards in a corridor development? Entire yard changes or 1 to 2 small changes in a corner of their yard? Trying to picture the level of participation. Briita, I believe that's for you.
Sure. Yeah, it can vary, so case by case. In some of the more narrow sections where the house is a little bit closer to the corridor, that's where we might do a pretty narrow buffer of improvement, maybe 10 to 20 feet of invasives removal, so blackberry English ivy removal right along the creek with replanting after invasives are controlled, and give folks the option to help kind of choose native shrubs and ground cover and trees they would like to see installed. Under the corridor level program that we have, we actually are able to provide all of the site prep, planting, and maintenance labor for 5 years. So the landowner is signing a 5-year contract and project plan with the district, and then we have habitat restoration contractors that do all the work, really, and then the landowner can certainly decide how far up into the backyard or the upland area they're interested in working, and that's a little bit more on their own. So each site, we try and do as wide a buffer within that vegetated corridor as they're willing, and then we can help with invasives removal closer to their home, kind of case by case. But majority of the funding is really just being set aside for that riparian corridor and within the wetland.
All right, and she had a follow-up question I probably should have read. What is your best advice for someone who is introducing the idea of a corridor development in a small city?
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend trying to find a few willing landowners that are really gung-ho about doing some of this early. So early adapters, right, that want to be doing some naturescaping type practices, and then use them as kind of reference sites, and maybe they can attract some of their neighbors upstream and downstream from them. I would also kind of go to the restoration activity policy, I suppose, of protecting gaps. So look for an area that's already got some restoration that's historically been done along the corridor if possible. So whether it's a different jurisdiction or another friends group or river keepers or whoever it is that has maybe done historic restoration, and then kind of try and use that to leverage interest adjacent to those previously restored sites.
That's great. Okay, now quite a few of our folks stayed with us. I see from Laura that she had to log off. Even though she's not with us, the rest may want to know that these questions and the answers will be available in the recording. We don't have a way to capture them, at least the answers post-recording. So with that, because we are 5 minutes after, did someone want to say something? Nope. Okay, from Luann, she's capturing what I was about to say. Thanks. Wonderful and helpful presentations. You guys did awesome. There was so much great information packed into that. It's well worth the few minutes that we've gone over. So I thank all of our speakers for your time, for everything that you've shared and your willingness to do this webinar. And for our participants, I invite you to check out our urban and community conservation web pages at the link shown there. And if you haven't already, help strengthen the value of our network on Facebook by helping us post stories, questions, and comments. You can do that by sending a request to me and my successor, and we actually do the posting. So next month, the topic will be, on October 15th, will be the Iowa Watershed Approach for Urban and Rural Resilience, and it will be facilitated, hosted by Ariel Rivers, who is taking over the webinars. Ariel is our NACD Pacific Region rep and definitely highly interested in this topic and has a lot of experience to share with everyone. And with that, thank you again to our speakers and to our participants. Have a great day. Bye now.